Ferguson. Albert skorar! Albert Gunnarsson hefur skorað. Ragnar Bergjesson skorar mark. Glæsilega. Óskar Rafn á móti Bjarna. Og Bjarni með góða sendingu fyrir og Haraldur Ingvarsson.
Welcome back to another episode of Best of Pod Ever. In this second preview episode, we're going to talk about three teams, IA, Fram, and FH, and we're probably going to go in that order. As always, I am delighted to be joined by Tryggvi. Tryggvi's here. He just got back from a game that he was coaching. It went so-so, is what he says. So, if he seems a little down to you, that's why. I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, it's true. But
yeah, I'll try not to take my frustrations out on FO.
Yes, don't. All right, let's kick this off with IA. So they're promoted back into the league. They were in the league 2 seasons ago. A lot of talk about them trying to successfully remain in the league, right? They've kind of been a yo-yo team a little bit in recent times. And so, yeah, here they are. They're back. A lot of ins and outs. They have had 6 transfers in, 5 transfers out. Yeah, we've seen them twice now. Tryggvi, what are your thoughts on them? How do you think their season is going to go?
It's really hard to say. They're a historic club that's but like you said, have struggled in the past few years, been a bit up and down. Maybe they've struggled a bit with this history, like try to maybe be something they're not. I think Fram struggled with that a little bit a few years ago as well, maybe trying a bit too much, maybe not recognizing that they need to do a bit of a rebuild that they've done now. So yeah, it looks to be on that way. But we both predicted them 9th place. But it is quite hard. I think you said in the first episode they were quite impressive against Valur.
Yeah.
To keep the scoreline down, and then they went on and absolutely slaughtered Haukau. But that was also after the sending off. I think the first half was quite dreadful, to be honest. I was expecting maybe a little bit more against Haukau, especially with this team. They have quite a good spine. If we go sort of a little bit into their ins and outs, they brought in, I think maybe their 2 biggest signings so far have been Oliver Stefansson from Breiðablik, a young defender that looked very promising, went to Norrköping in Sweden, came back, he had a bit of injury, but he also just has struggled with minutes at Breiðablik. So now moved to IA to try to resurrect. I think resurrect is maybe a bit harsh. He's still quite young, but maybe sort of kickstart his career a little bit. But he's before he went to Norrköping, he was one of the most talented defenders in Iceland. So that could be huge for them. And then another defender they brought in is Erik Tobias Sandberg, a Norwegian defender. With his major claim to fame is that he was in a rap group with Erling Haaland back when they were teenagers.
Oh, that's a stat. Oh man, mic drop right there. Wow. That's incredible.
But he's quite highly rated. He was a bit of a youth prospect on Football Manager back in the day. So he's one of those players that if he fits in, he could be a huge signing, a really stabilizing defense, especially next to Oliver. And then maybe the last one that I kind of forgot is a bit of an unknown. Maybe a bit. He's young. He's like 19 or maybe 20. Hinrik Harðarson. So he moved from Þróttur. Very talented, scored a lot in the first division, and there's a lot of interest from other big clubs to bring him in. But he went to IA. He's playing and starting with for IA and starting next to Viktor Jonsson, who scored that hat trick against Haukau. So he's definitely one to look out for. And then they have, I'm going to stop talking, but then they have sort of the Smáradonna in the midfield, Arnar Smárason. If you didn't listen to our last episode, he's a huge presence. So they have experience. They have some young players with experience. So they should be okay, but I think they need to maybe recognize where they are in as a club at this moment, that they're not, fighting for Europe. This is a team they just need to get some points on the board early, get safe early, and then build from there maybe.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's spot on. I think the only thing I would maybe add is just talking a little bit more about Erik Sandberg. I watched him when he was at Jerv, who they were in the Eliteserien a couple seasons ago. It wasn't last season. I think it was the season before that. And, I mean, let's be honest, Jerv were terrible. But he played a part in that. He had 26 matches during that season for them. And, I think it's going to be interesting to see, how he does adapt to the league. Yeah, they've kind of been a mixed bag, right? Like, to start off the season, they kind of got slaughtered, but then they bounced back last week, and it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing this week, which has already kicked off. Stjarnan Valor's going on right this second as we talk. But they play Fylkir on Sunday, and I think that's another winnable game for them, or at least they should be looking to get points from that. So I don't think it's going to be as maybe tight in terms of the relegation as a lot of people were saying. I think they'll, at the end of the day, I think they'll be okay without too much fuss, but you never really know about these things, right? So it could be completely wrong, but they've had an okay start. So
I think the game against Fylkir will be quite telling, because Fylkir had been really promising. I think they've surprised people, including me, a bit how good they've looked in the first 3 games. They only have 1 point, but that point was against Valur, where we lost against Valur, so we can make that direct comparison. So then they'll come up against each other now, and if Fylkir continue the way they've been playing so far, I think they have a chance of beating them. And then this prediction thing, at least could flip, at least for the time being, where maybe IA could finish below Fylkir, and then it could be tighter. But yeah, I agree, they should be okay. But I mean, there's no real apparent terrible team. I think Haukau is maybe expected to be that team. I think that they did get battered by IA, so I mean, let's see, maybe they will turn into that team. Vestre hasn't scored a goal, so I mean, there's a chance that those two just drop down like a rock. So yeah, we'll see in the next few weeks what the gap is between the likes of IA and the likes of Haukau and Vestre.
Let's move to Fram now. So we talk a lot about Fram and about a couple players in particular, just because we love them, that being Fregi and Thiago. But, they now have the Old Kauer coach, Runar. So that's a big change, right? Like that's a big change, and I think it's paying off. Right, there's been a formation change for them this season as they moved into it. We were tipped off to that by Fregi, and it seems to be okay. I mean, they hung pretty well with Vikingur in round 2, and got a win in the first round. It's looked better, I think, in terms of their playing style. I think a lot of that can come down to the coaching. But they've also brought in some good players. Kyle McLagan is one that kind of catches my eye a little bit, as well as Kenny Choppert. McLagan was at Vikingur until recently, this last window actually. And you've talked about him on several occasions, and that you were a big fan of his. So maybe you can speak to that in a second. But yeah, I mean, they've looked good to start the season. Really, what they need to do, I think, is work on their defending. Last season, it was not great. I think it let them down on more than one occasion. And yeah, with some of the players that they brought in, I think that's been a focal point for them. They've had 7 new players join this season, and they've had 5 leave, including the other Aaron Johansson. So there's only one Aaron Yo now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame that we can't make that fantastic joke anymore.
Yeah,
but maybe he'll be back next season with after, I think. Yeah, I was a bit more bullish about them in my preseason prediction. I think I had them 7th. You had them 10th. I think and that's, I mean, of course that has to do with the manager. I think Runar is someone who knows exactly what he's doing. He's been one of the best managers in Iceland for a while, and that's So he definitely is a big reason for that, but I think they just have a really good spine. And you mentioned, Freddy and Thiago. There's Guðmundur Magnusson, who didn't have the greatest season last season. He had a really good season two years ago. He was one of the top goal scorers. He was a bit annoyed that he didn't get into the national team at the end of that season. The national team when they were picking from the January friendlies, when they picked from the Nordic countries. And then the addition of Kyle and Kenny that you've been speaking about, I think that's a huge thing because their defense was atrocious. They conceded the most of any team in the league last year, which says a lot considering how Keflavik were relegated after only a few weeks, it seems. So and then they were basically bailed out by teenagers, where they had people like Þengill Órásson, who's now relegated to the bench for at least for the time being. But he came in towards the end of last season and just sort of saved their defense, which is a little bit worrying that it required these youth prospects to come in and save them. But now alongside those youth prospects, they have these experienced players like Kyle, who was actually playing at a Fram before he went to Víkingur, but he was out all of last season, which was a big shame for him. But he's back and he's playing now full time, so that's a huge boost. So I think they just have a really good spine. They have really good attacking talent. The defense is stronger. I think they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be pull ahead of a relegation spot, and I think there's even a world where the likes of Kawa or FH or Stjarnan or Kawa drop, maybe don't do as well as they should do, and then somehow Fram sneak into the top 6. I think it's definitely doable.
Historically speaking, Fram are one of the more traditional sides in Iceland.
Yeah, correct? It's Fram, Ía, and Kawa, and these are the historic giants of Icelandic football. They just not had the greatest of times the last few decades.
Yeah, sleeping giants of a sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should mention. Well, we already mentioned Aaron He's out. Delfin Tshimbe has also left. Ian Perello has also gone. Thorir Gudjonsson gone. Victor Bjarki is gone as well. He actually went to FC Copenhagen. They lost a little bit there, but as you've already kind of discussed, I think they've made up for it, and yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how far they can go and what they can do this season. I like you said or alluded to. I don't think we're necessarily expecting them to maybe hit Europe, but they could potentially be in that section that is right around that cutoff line when we split, right? And so there is a possibility they could be in with a chance, but it seems tough. There's a solid group of 4, maybe 5 clubs right now who are kind of guarding Europe, so to speak. So, all right, let's move on to our final team for this episode. We're going to talk about FH. Our show notes say Joe Rant, which I love. I don't really have a rant too much, to be honest, and the reason for that is because I'm not really sure where we're at the moment. Like I've been reading some things and just kind of watching, and we've lost 1 and 1-1 already in the season. We lost to Breiðablik, so that's not necessarily too surprising. And then we beat Kawa in Akureyri, and that was surprising considering we didn't play them very well last season. So I truly am not sure how to feel about this team right now. I want to think that we could get into that upper 6, but even in my own predictions, I had them in 7th. So it's a kind of a strange. It feels like a strange team to me, right? So we brought in Kjartan Kari permanently. He was on loan with us last season, but we brought him in from Haugesund. We've brought in Sigurður Bjartur, who's already scored for us. Dusan Berkovic, I was pretty high on him, and I think was pretty disappointed after the first match, and he didn't play anything in against Kawa. I was expecting him to kind of be a regular starter, and I'm not sure if that's going to pan out now, so that's kind of proving to be interesting. Bodvar Bodvarsson, I don't know if I said that right, but I am looking forward to him. I think he's had a good start to the season. He's going to be a key cog for us all season long, and hopefully he can stay healthy. Isak Oli, we brought him in from Esbjerg in Denmark. A lot of hype, promise around him as well. And he's played the full 90 minutes in both games so far.
I think maybe the question mark, like you said, I think the reason why there's such a huge question mark on FH is the players they've lost. So they've lost Captain Henry, who was like how much 30-40% of their goals or something like that. Like it was an insane amount of part of their goals. And
he's in the coaching staff now, though.
Yeah, exactly. He's an assistant manager. So he's a huge loss, and they replaced him with Sigurður Bjartur and Arnór Borg, who was on loan, and Kjartan Kári, who was on loan as well. So Sigurður Bjartur is the new kid that they brought in. He was very promising when he came to KR. Never really lived up to it, maybe. So I mean, but there's a chance that he can live up to this promise now. He's already scored a goal, like you mentioned, but it's a huge boots to fill. Ulfur is coming back from the US, so he'll be back in the next few weeks. So that's going to be huge if he can pick up the form that he had last season. That would be, I think that's maybe what they really need, because there's a lot of goals missing. And then, I mean, the other part that's missing is David Snær, who I'm pretty sure was in our team of the year last year.
Yep.
He was absolutely everything in that team at times. So it's more like how they've managed to replace those two.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned David Snær. I was getting to him because he's definitely a big loss for us this year. Danny Hataka is not in the squad. Etu Momo, those guys played kind of bit piece roles, but they were still players that I think a lot of people were excited about, including myself. Two Finnish players. Vidar Ari, right, is not there. He went to HamCam. You know, it's hard to really place them. Yeah, I agree with you. I think goals are going to be the biggest question mark. Like, if we can find our goal-scoring boots, and as long as Sindri can hold on to the ball, then I think, we'll be okay. But I think this is another team that's probably going to be hanging out around that kind of cutoff line, 7th, 8th, maybe 6th. Maybe we can sneak in there, but yeah, that's how I see it. All right. That's it for this episode. A quick score update. Well, there is no score. Stjarnan Valor's getting close to halftime, 0-0, but Valor's down to 10 men. They have had someone sent off. I didn't catch who it was, but that's a bit dramatic. So, any final thoughts, Trygvi?
I think all these teams are quite interesting. They could easily be, challenging, like you said, for top 6, and they could also be dragged into the bottom, into the relegation battle if they lack the consistency, if they lack the goals, if their defense is not strong enough. So it'll be super interesting to watch these three, which way they go.
Yeah, and I guess I should maybe amend my statement with FH. I mean, they do have players that can score, right? Kjartan Kári, we saw that already. I think Vuk is capable of doing it as well. He can certainly create things. And then, as you already mentioned, Sigurður Bjartur has already got a goal for us as well. So we're just wanting that to continue. So a little amendment. Cool. Yep. All right. Well, we will be back. Next episode will probably be the weekend review from round 3. Then we'll have another mini preview of 3 other teams for the season for you after that. So thanks everybody for joining us. Appreciate you. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.